You know what?
Because I stayed up like all night.
This happens. This is a clue we shouldn't do that. All right, everybody, let's look at our prayer for study. First, I have to find my glasses. Here we go. Christ, my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work. For to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I'm guessing when you start a chapter called, whatever it was, How Rome Conquered Italy, it's kind of a spoiler, isn't it? You pretty much know what's going to happen in this chapter when it's called that. And we might have expected this, right? Because last week we learned that one of the primary occupations of the Romans was fighting. Either each other, on occasion, or other people. So Rome has stages. Remember I told you last week, or the week before, Rome had kings, and we've talked about that. That was last week. But we covered 250 years almost of history in a week. Now, for 500 years, they're going to be a republic. They're going to have elected officials. But that whole time wasn't the same, that 500 years. Because when it started out, Rome is just Rome. They don't really own anything, right, except Rome. They don't run other cities, except that they had deported all those people from Alba Longa, after the Horatii and the Curiatii had battled with each other. But over a series of years, over not quite the 500 years that we're going to talk about, Rome not only took over Italy, but pretty much the entire Mediterranean world, which is pretty amazing. Or bad, as the case may be. It depends on who you are and where you live, I suppose, whether you think that's good or bad. And I told you last week that this week would be some more of those most famous stories. We talked about the Horatii and the Curiatii and that terrible woman who ran over her dad with a chariot. And oh my goodness. So we're going to continue. This is what we can call these 2 weeks the famous stories of early Rome. The stories, guys, you know what? That once upon a time every school kid knew. Every school kid for thousands of years knew these stories. And we live in one of the first times where you're the lucky few that knows these stories. And the kids in school don't know it. They don't teach this anymore. But this was standard. If you said you didn't know these stories, they'd say, what's wrong with you? What, did you grow up in a cave? Everybody knows that. I don't know that they would actually say it that way. But so this is the stuff that our forefathers grew up with. These were the stories they knew and loved. And we're going to love them too because they're exciting. Okay, so first up, I'm going to work my way through the first 3 parts of chapter 6 that we read. And I mentioned this the week before. They threw out their kings. We're not a monarchy anymore. We're a republic. Can somebody remind me one more time what we mean when we call something a republic?
Like they have a council. Yeah, and then they have, I don't know what they...
Can I phrase it differently? How is a republic different from a democracy? That's how I should phrase it.
A democracy is where everybody votes. A republic is whenever just one vote.
Yeah. Well, let's qualify that. Let's define that, because that might sound like not everybody gets to vote if you're not important enough. And that's not true. We're a republic. And do we all, I mean, if we're citizens and we're over a certain age, do we get to vote? Yeah. So everybody does get to vote, but what is the difference?
Except the women and children.
Well, yeah. And once upon a time in America, do you know it's only been a little over 100 years that women could vote. 1920 is when they gave women the vote. So, but that is not the difference. That is not the difference. In a democracy, who votes? Everybody who meets the standards, right? All citizens. And what do they vote for?
Laws.
Hmm? Which laws in particular?
The laws that they want.
Well, all the laws. In other words, any law that gets passed, they all vote on it. Now, do we all vote? Do we all go out and vote in America every time the government wants to do anything? No. If they want to change the tax code, we all go vote. Oh, we got to vote on the tax code. No. What do we vote for in America?
Presidents,
Mm-hmm. And who else?
governors, and Senate.
Mm-hmm. Government officials. And what do? What do those people do?
Make laws.
Mm-hmm. We choose the people to make laws for us. Right. Are you familiar with the term delegating authority? You know what that means? So if, say, your mom tells you to bake cookies, all right? Hey, but we're having a party, bake 6 dozen chocolate chip cookies. But you're feeling a little lazy for whatever reason. It could happen. So instead of doing it all yourself, you call your cousins or your friends or your siblings, or don't call your pets. I don't think they'll be very helpful. And I don't want to eat those cookies when they're done. No. But and then you tell them. You assemble the ingredients. You melt the butter. You crack the eggs. You turn on the oven and get it preheated, right? And you're delegating. You're delegating authority. You're in charge of this. You're in charge of this. You're in charge of this. Does that make sense? Because I don't want to do it all myself. And so in a republic, we delegate our authority. We're in charge, the people. Remember, we the people. That's how the Constitution starts. It's the first, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union. We are in charge. But we choose people and we say, hey, you, I'm giving you authority to make laws for me. You go to Washington, D.C. and you vote, or Springfield, or, is it Des Moines in Iowa? Is Des Moines the?
Yeah,
Oh my gosh, remember. And then I tell them to make laws for me. But then if I don't like what they do, when their turn comes for re-election, I don't vote for them again and I choose someone new. That's the difference. I know it sounds like a little difference, but if you think about it, if we were a democracy, we'd spend all our time voting. Oh my gosh, and they'd be counting votes constantly because the government is always passing laws. All right. So Rome decided, we're not all going to go out like Athens did and vote every single time we want to do anything. But we're going to choose people and they're going to vote. So Luke, you were on the right. Everybody who said, a group of people votes. So they have a Senate. And instead of a president, they have 2 consuls, not councils. Consuls. 2 of them, and they get to be consul for 1 year. Then you're out, and 2 new people get to be consul.
Could they re-elect?
Yes, it wasn't good form for a long time to re-elect them again the next year. There were lots of people who were consul more than once, but it wasn't until we're getting really close to empire times that somebody started just snatching it and doing it over and over and over and over and over. It was understood that you would take a break. Okay, that's enough. One more thing that Dorothy Mills tells us is that sometimes, if you're going to be surrounded by people that don't like you, and if you are fond of fighting with people, you're going to have some military issues, right? And there's going to be emergencies. So sometimes there's an emergency. The Romans said, you know what? When 2 people are in charge at the same time, this can be a problem. Because maybe they don't agree. one person can get things done faster than two people sometimes because they don't spend time. Yeah, what do you think we should do? I don't know. What do you think? And so they, in emergencies, they would choose a guy and they say, you're in charge for 6 months. Fix it. Fix the problem. And they called him the dictator. Now, when we use the word dictator, it's not a compliment, right? It's not a good thing. When we say someone's being a dictator, we say Hitler was a dictator or something like that, we mean somebody who grabs power and they're mean and they're bossing people around. The Romans didn't mean that. Dictator literally means someone who speaks, right? And he speaks on behalf of Rome. So he steps up and he says, this is what we're going to do. He delegates. You do this, you do this, you do this. We're going to get this done. And then I'll only do this for 6 months. And 6 months from now, I will lay down the power and I won't be in charge anymore. I'll just get us through the crisis. So that was their system. That was basically their system. Hi, ladies. Come on in. We actually haven't even done the first question yet. So when we left off last week in the story, the last king had a horrible, horrible son who attacked a noblewoman who killed herself and told her husband and her dad and her husband's cousin Brutus to avenge her, the insult to her and her honor, and drive the kings out of Rome, which they did. They did not kill him. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Christian. But they drove him out. They drove the Tarquins out and said, don't come back. But do you think that somebody who used to be king is just going to, oh, all right, well, so sorry it didn't work out. Hope it goes well for you guys. Do you think that's going to be an attitude that somebody might have?
Nope.
What kind of attitude might they have?
You guys stink. I'm gonna try all I can to destroy you.
Yes. Oh, I'm angry. I'm very angry. We're not putting up with this. You're not going to get away with this. So Tarquin, the last king, sends some guys into Rome to start a conspiracy to bring him back in. You might say, why would somebody do that? Here's why. Young Tarquin, who was a rotter and attacked Lucretia, had friends. And young Tarquin had money. He had power. He threw amazing parties. He could get anything he wanted. And hanging out with him was really fun. It was a good life to hang out with the king's son. And then the king's son was gone. And those young men that used to hang out with him, they missed their parties. They missed their good food and their good wine and the dancing girls and the flutes and everything. And so Tarquin knows this, and he sends guys in secretly. He says, hey, you bring us back in, we'll have some parties. We'll have some amazing parties. I'll reward you. I'll pay you. Money will just automatically be deposited into your account if you help me out.
Does that have counts?
No, he's translating it to disabled.
I am. And so they got a conspiracy going to take over Rome, bring the Tarquins back in, and overthrow the consuls. The conspiracy got leaked, and the consuls found out about it. But here's the horrible thing. 2 of the conspirators were Brutus's sons.
What?
That's what Brutus said. What?
Dude, what?
The guy who's going to go down in history as the liberator of Rome and the driver out of his own sons. Well, you know what? That's treason. Do you know what they do to traitors?
Kill him.
Oh, fling them off the rock. Yes. In this case, they didn't fling them off the rock, and I'm not sure why.
They take all their stuff.
They paraded them out. And actually, the historian Livy tells it better than I can tell it. Their punishment created a great sensation owing to the fact that in this case, the office of consul imposed upon a father the duty of inflicting punishment on his own children. He who ought not to have witnessed it was destined to be the one to see it duly carried out. Youths belonging to the noblest families were standing tied to the post, but all eyes were turned to the consul's children, the others unnoticed. The consuls took their seats. The lictors were told to inflict the penalty. They scourged their bare backs with rods and then beheaded them. And then Dorothy Mills picks it up here and she says, and Brutus the consul, yet also the heartbroken father, sat in his seat of office, never flinching from the stern duty required of him. Here's Rome. You do your duty. Do you guys remember last week we talked about the fact that in the Aeneid poem that we're reading together in Latin, we're not reading it in Latin, but when you read it in Latin, Aeneas is referred to as pius Aeneas, pious Aeneas. And we usually use that term to mean religious. But for the Romans, it meant you do your duty. It means you do your duty to the gods, you do your duty to your parents, you do your duty to your country, do your duty. And this was really important to them. And Brutus is this shining example. We might be kind of horrified. That would be a horrible spot to be in, wouldn't it? To be the leader of a nation and then have to punish a traitor, but the traitor is your child. And you have to make the call. But he couldn't let him go. If he did, would people trust him as a leader anymore? No, we don't like our leaders to play favorites, right? To do special things for their own family. We don't like that. We frown on that. They did too. So, yeah. Well, Brutus was not around very long. He went out to fight against Tarquin, who had an army together, and he was killed in battle. Now, I don't know if this town, oh, it is. On this map, we just need the bottom half of this map, really. This little close-up here of Rome and the area around it, this town Clusium up here. Clusium had a king named Lars Porsena. And the Tarquins ran to Lars Porsena and they said, look, here's the deal. You're king of Clusium. Do you really want a situation going on among your neighbors where they throw out kings? Because maybe you'll be next. Do you really want to let that go? Because what you need to do is give us help, march on Rome to get us put back in as kings, to protect yourself. Because when the Clusiites hear that people are flinging out kings, maybe you're next. And Lars Porsena said, well, you got a really good point. So he got together an army, and they marched to Rome. Well, there was one really good entrance into Rome across a bridge over the Tiber River. And my first question I asked you is, for what great deed is Horatius Cocles famous?
Well, he went out, basically help her back until they could get the bridge out of the way. Burnt down.
Horatius at the Bridge is one of, I don't know if it's the most famous, but it's really way up there. In fact, there's a poem, it's got 70 stanzas, it's many, many pages long, it's called Horatius at the Bridge. And there's a classical school in Kentucky that they have their 6th graders memorize it, and you get a medal. If anyone wants that poem and you would like to memorize it, I'll get you the medal and some other award, if you're interested in memorizing a very long poem about Horatius the Bridge. Some of you know the Devlins. Nate Devlin memorized this and recited it for me. Anyway.
You memorized all 70 pages?
Well, 70 stanzas. It was like maybe 30 pages or something like it. But yes, he did.
Okay, yeah, no.
He did. So I am offering that. That's on the table. if anybody wants to memorize the poem. Here's the story, though. Horatius, nicknamed Cocles, which means he only has one of his eyes was gone, damaged, gone. And so he said, here's the deal, guys. Lars Porsena and the Tarquins are marching this way, and they're just going to march straight across this bridge, and we're going to be fighting them in Rome if we don't fight them before they get to Rome. We got to break that bridge. We got to cut off passage across the river to the army. You get down there and you start hacking and sawing and breaking that bridge as fast as you possibly can. And I'm going to go stand on the other side of the bridge, and I'm going to keep fighting till I can't fight anymore and hold them back. And so he did. Well, two other guys were kind of ashamed, to send him over there alone. It seemed bad for him. So two other guys joined him. And of course, it might seem a hopeless case, but do you remember the Persians and that pass of Thermopylae? Right? If you have a narrow place, like say wide enough for 3 people, then only 3 of the enemy can really come at you at a time. They can't all come at once. They can't get to you. So if you just keep cutting down the guy that's right in front of you over and over and over again, you can actually, a few guys in a narrow space can take out a lot of other guys. And they did. So finally they hear the bridge kind of creaking a little bit. Horatius says to the other guys, get back over there before it falls. Go, are you okay? He said, no, you do it. I'm staying here till I know Rome is safe. And they run, get over to the other side just before the bridge comes crashing down. There's no bridge, and Horatius is on the wrong side. And the historian who tells us the story said, oh, Father Tiber, the god who watches over the Tiber River. Oh, Father Tiber, receive me into your waters and keep me safe. And he just dives in armor, everything, and he just starts swimming. The enemies like shooting arrows and throwing javelins at him and stuff, and he's just swimming, right? And he gets to the other side safe. And Lars Porsena and the Tarquins can't get across. He saved Rome. They built a statue to him. I know. Yay, Horatius! See, it makes me so happy that 2,500 years later, we're having a little applause party for Horatius. He earned it. He earned it. Okay, awesome. Well, if you go downriver a ways, you can get places that aren't a little more shallow, right? And maybe you don't want to march your whole army across, but people can get across, or you can build a little raft and go across, right? So it's not like nobody can get across, but the army can get across. So they're still over there. Lars Porsena's camp, they're still over there. Well, we get to the next question. This guy, Mucius Scaevola. His name is Mucius, and he got the nickname Scaevola, which means left-handed. How did he get, what happened to his other hand?
Was his hand cut off or something like that?
No.
He burnt it off?
He just burnt it off.
Why? He went over to assassinate.
Okay, so now, Kristen, I don't mean to, but did you read the Dorothy Mills chapter?
I read some of it.
Okay, because you need to read. All right, unless you were ill or traveling or something like that. But you need to, because we should all know the answers when we come, okay? But I like telling the story anyway and embellishing it. So, Mucius goes to the leaders in Rome and he says, I got a plan. I'm sneaking over there and I'm going to do something. I'm not going over there to plunder or anything. I'm going over there. I got a plan. Let me go. And they're like, okay, go for it, Mucius. So he goes over. He's got a dagger. I'm going to assassinate Lars Porsena. I'm going to assassinate the king of Clusium. So he smuggles himself into the camp. He's kind of disguised as one of their soldiers. And he comes up, and there's a table, and there's 2 guys sitting at the table, and they're paying the soldiers. The 2 guys are dressed kind of the same. Mucius doesn't know which one is the king. One of them is the king, and one of them is the guy who's in charge of the money, paying the soldiers, right? Mucius doesn't know, but he's got a 50-50 chance, right, of getting the right one. So he just grabs his dagger, and he jumps over the table, and he stabs one of the guys to death. It's the wrong guy.
Oh no.
I know. That's how he felt. Like, oh no. So they grabbed him. What? What are you doing? What are you doing? Unfortunately, Lars Porsena was still alive. He said, hey, here, what are you up to? What's your deal? Mucius won't say. And Lars Porsena says, if you don't tell me everything, I'm gonna throw you in that fire. I'm gonna throw you right in that fire. And Mucius just stone cold looks at him and says, yeah? And he just sticks his hand in the fire. He says, that's how much Romans care for fire and pain. And he just burned his hand off. Lars Porsena is flabbergasted. He says, oh my goodness, these Romans are tough. And so Lars Porsena says, you know what, dude? You are awesome. I'm going to let you go. I'm going to let you go because I don't even know what to say about this. You're amazing. I wish my soldiers were like you. And Mucius Scaevola, now left-handed, says, well, here's the deal. The thing you never could have tortured out of me, I'm going to tell you freely because you're letting me go. He said, I think, was it 50 or 300? I can't remember. Does any of you help me? Was it 50? Okay. See, now it's bothering me. Oh, 300. It is 300. He says, there are 300 young Roman men, and they have all sworn to assassinate you, and we're going to come over here one at a time until somebody gets the job done. You're always going to be looking over your shoulder. You better sleep with a dagger under your pillow at night. Now, here's the thing. The historian that tells the story doesn't say anything about there being a conspiracy of 300 guys. I think Mucius made it up because he knew it would psych out Lars Porsena and scare him. I don't think there were 300 guys in a conspiracy. I think it was just Mucius.
Yeah, because also he asked the king, like,
Yeah, he said, can I go? I've got a plan. And maybe this was part of the plan. So, but it worked. Lars Porsena was terrified. He went to the Tarquins. He says, you know what? I'm done. You're going to have to deal with this on your own. Because it's not worth me worrying about somebody stabbing me in the back every second of the day and night. I can't live that way. I'm out. That was the end, really, of the whole we want to get back into Rome mission of the Tarquins. There was one more slightly less famous story, but interesting nonetheless, about a girl named Cloelia, who was a prisoner of war over in Lars Porsena's camp. And she broke out with a bunch of other girls and swam across the river and went home. She just broke out. And Lars Porsena said, but these were my hostages. We didn't cut a deal. Give them back. And Rome says, we're not giving them back. And Lars Porsena thought about it a while. He said, first we had this Mucius guy. Now even their women just break out of prison and swim across the river and go home. That's pretty awesome too. And he said, here's the deal. If you give them back, we'll say we're even Steven, and then I'll give them back to you. But you just give them back for my honor, right? That I'm giving them back to you of my own free will because they're amazing. So they did. They did. Rome said, okay. Cloelia said, we'll do it. Let's trust him. So she went back, she and the ladies, and then Lars Porsena formally released the hostages. And he left, and the Tarquins went on their way and gave up the attempt. So Rome is now free. There's no threat to Rome itself. So Rome starts threatening other towns. Not exactly. The neighbors, we talked about this. The neighbors weren't super happy. Okay, picture this. Picture Davenport suddenly swelling with people. The population explodes. It becomes very, very powerful. Can you imagine that Bettendorf and Rock Island and Moline might start thinking, Davenport's trying to take over. Davenport has taken over the Quad Cities here. I don't like it. And I think maybe we need to do something to control their, delusions of power. This was what it was like for Rome's neighbors. This town keeps growing, and these guys are tough. I don't know that we want a super strong city full of tough guys 5 miles down the road, because they're going to come for us. Maybe we should do something about it. Yeah.
It kind of sounds like the Israelites and the Egyptians.
This exactly, very good, Christian. That's exactly right. This is why Pharaoh didn't want to let the baby boys live in the time of Moses. Like, these people will become too powerful for us. Same thing. And so they started a lot of scuffles with their neighbors. The first group that we talked about was the Volscians and the Aequians. These are just names of nearby towns and tribes. Here's the Volscians, and here's the Aequians. So this is their area that they live in, and they're just pretty close neighbors. I don't think this little thing has a key, but obviously it's okay. Here's Lake Trasimene. Oh, here's Lake Trasimene. So from here, this map is it's like the length of my hand. And do we have a key? Well, that makes me very unhappy. We have no key. So we're going to go after the Volscians and the Aequians. They went after the Volscians, and their chief general was named Caius Marcius, and he took the Volscian town of Corioli. So when you do something amazing, I think we should start doing this. When you do something amazing, they nickname you, like Musius Scaevola. He's left-handed, and then you get to give that name to your descendants. They all get to be Scaevola. So you meet somebody who's like, oh man, it's your great-grandpa burned his hand right off, right? He's awesome. Your family's awesome. You get to give it down. So Musius got the name, Marcius got the name Coriolanus because he took the town of Corioli. All right, however, Coriolanus, do you remember last week at the end of the class, I said there were two groups of people in Rome. The patricians, who were the kind of hoity-toity old nobility families, and the plebeians, who was everybody else. Coriolanus was a patrician, and he supported the patricians. And somebody got an idea, hey, why don't we take some of this loot that we get from our enemies when we conquer them and give it to the plebeians? Coriolanus was like, no way. I'm giving them anything. And he got in people's good graces, and they threw him out. They exiled him. Guys, he went over to the Volscians. Just like Alcibiades, when he got thrown out of Athens and he went over to Sparta, Coriolanus went to the Volscians and knocks on the door and says, hey, I am not happy with Rome. I am their greatest general, and they just threw me out and treated me like dirt. I want to make life really unpleasant for them. If you let me in and give me an army, I know all their tricks. I know everything their army's going to do. We can take them out. So Coriolanus, at the head of the Volscian army, starts attacking farms outside of Rome and people who are outside of Rome. And so he finally is camped right outside Rome. He's going to attack Rome, his own home. And here's the next question I asked you. How was Coriolanus persuaded not to attack the city? What happened that made him not do it?
Actually, I'm not going to answer it because other people.
Okay, would someone else like to answer it? Because it's possible, Bryn, that nobody else wants to answer it.
Maybe.
Would you like to answer it, Emma?
I don't know whether I'm right.
You can give it a try, but you don't have to.
Didn't this one noble Roman lady persuade his mother and the guy's wife and children to emotionally manipulate him into despair?
Yeah, basically.
Basically.
Well said.
I don't really know how else to say
Yeah, I don't.
Say a few words and then.
Yeah, because he's going to crumble before his mom and his wife and his kids come out of Rome and say, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please don't attack us. So, yeah, very good, Emma. They come out, and his mom, somebody says, hey, Coriolanus, there's some women here to see you, you know. And he goes out, it's his mom. He's like, oh, Mom. And she's, hang on. She says, I need to know something first. Am I here as your guest and your mother or as your prisoner? Coriolanus, he's feeling bad already. Like, are you serious? Are you seriously going to attack the place where you were born and raised and the place that made you what you are, the place where your wife and your kids here are living? You're seriously going to do that?
But then he'd own it.
Yeah. But there would be a lot of destruction and bloodshed before it was done.
Sure.
Maybe of his own family.
Yeah, because Romans.
Because Romans. And so, yeah, he packed up the army and he left. He told the Volscians, no, we're going to do it. And the story is, it's a little hazy. We're not totally sure what happened to Coriolanus, but rumor has it. Okay, that's okay. Yes, no, I defy them. This. Rumor has it, Christian. Rumor has it that the Volscians turned on Coriolanus and killed him because they suspected him now. They suspected he had Roman sympathies again, right? And that maybe he would turn on the Volscians, and they did away with him. It's not a very. It's one of the not so happy. Because Coriolanus brought it on himself by being, by being haughty and not wanting to give the war spoils to the plebeians. And he never would have gotten thrown out if he'd been a little more humble and a little more compassionate, maybe. So, but I'm not going to say he got what he deserved, because I don't know if anybody deserves that.
Some people also say that he lived with the Volscians until he was like very old and then he died.
Yes.
But that's like more of a happy ending, but still not a happy
Yes. We just don't know.
ending. We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
But he didn't. Here's what they all agree: that he didn't come back to Rome. No story has him coming back to Rome to live. Okay, so next up is the Aequians. He's conquered the Volscians, and they've basically taken over their territory. Now they're fighting the Aequians. Well, they're fighting the Aequians, and unfortunately, one of the consuls. Oh, by the way, I didn't mention this. Dorothy Mills did. In Rome, the two consuls were also the generals that went out to war. It's sort of like, in America, the president is the commander-in-chief of the army, but he doesn't really march out and go with the army. He just arranges for things to be done. But in Rome, they literally went out and camped with the army and led the army. They were marching in the front, the consuls. So one of the consuls' camps in the war with the Aequians got surrounded and trapped by the Aequians. They can't get out. And then the other consul tries to bring help, and they get trapped too. Both consuls and the whole Roman army have a problem. So, enter Cincinnatus. This is the last question I asked you. Cincinnatus had been consul, and he wasn't anymore. And right now he was fairly old for army stuff anyway. I don't know that he was elderly, with a cane or anything, but he was, not super young. And he was living on a farm outside of Rome. On his little farm, like a couple acres, and he farms, but he was known to be honest, wise, good fighter. So they sent a delegation out to his farm, and they said, Cincinnatus, we have an announcement for you. And Cincinnatus, the story goes, is working in the garden, and he's all dirty, and he says, okay, wait a minute. And he tells his wife, go get my toga. Because, for official business, a Roman citizen should wear the toga for, his dress clothes. And he's just wearing his grubbies, So she brings his toga, and he togas himself. And he says, proceed. And they said, our army is in a fix, Cincinnatus, and we have decided to proclaim you dictator. You get to be dictator for the next 6 months. We need you to go out and fix this because we trust you and we know you're good at these sort of things. Cincinnatus like, well, you know, I am busy in my garden, but okay. I will come and I will deal with it. And he does very rapidly. Let me read what Livy tells us. It just says, in a very short time, he had relieved the besieged camp and forced the Aequians to surrender to him completely. And I mean like in a week or two. A very short time.
That's quick.
Yeah. He told the leaders who were brought to him in chains that he did not require their blood. They were at liberty to depart. But as an open admission of defeat and subjugation of their nation, they would have to pass under the yoke. This was made of 3 spears, 2 fixed upright in the ground, and the third tied to them across the top. Put 2 spears in the ground. You make a little doorway, in other words. A doorway to nowhere with 3 spears, and you force them all, walk through that. And all the enemy soldiers have their swords drawn, and they make the army go. It's a sign of humiliation and defeat. He says, then you go your way. And then he's done, but he gets to be dictator for 6 months. But here's my last question. Was Cincinnatus eager to keep the power of dictator?
No.
He just went right home and laid it down. He said, okay, I'm done. Mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. I'm done. Now, this is kind of an important story for America because this idea of the guy who just minds his own business and works on his little farm, and then he comes and serves his country when there's need, but he doesn't try to hold on to power, even though he could, right? He doesn't say, I like being in charge. I like telling people what to do. I don't want to stop. Cincinnatus said, I'm done. And as a matter of fact, that was the ideal for our founding fathers. When America was being founded, they said, our leaders are like Cincinnatus. They're going to come and do what our country needs them to do, and then they're going to step down. Particularly George Washington. George Washington probably could have been in charge until he died. Honestly, everybody really loved George Washington because he was great during the war. He was a good president. They probably would have just kept choosing George Washington. But after, I don't remember how many terms he served. It might have just been 1. He said, nope. Was it 2? Was it 2? He said, I'm done. And at that point, there was no rule about how many times someone could be president. Now there's a rule that you can't be president more than twice. You can't serve more than 8 years and then you're done. You can't ever be president again. But then there was no rule. And so he could have he said, no, I'm laying down the power. And so in America, we have statues in various places that are kind of weird if you don't know this story. Okay, first up, this is a statue of George Washington. This is in the state capitol in Richmond, Virginia. Now, what you can't see, except a little tiny bit, here, I'm going to show everybody and then I'll bring it around. There's a little triangle-shaped thing down here, and it's a plow. And does anybody have any idea what all these long, skinny things might be, and there's something tied to them? You can't really, this is not a very good picture. Yeah, there is some sort of sword instrument. Okay, the plow is a farmer. But do you see how this thing is just a lot of long, skinny things? It looks like a pillar. And Emma said it looks kind of like a sword there. I need a better picture of this next time.
Bundle of sticks?
It's a bundle of sticks. What's a bundle of sticks with like a sword or axe tied to it mean?
You're gonna burn the armor. Is it?
Do you remember
Freedom.
the Fasces? In Rome, the leader has guys named lictors who go in front of him with a bundle of rods and axes tied together. And they show this guy can have you beaten with the rods and beheaded, just like Brutus did his sons. George Washington is standing in front of a plow with the Roman fasces next to him. The sculptor wants us to know he's like Cincinnatus. He's like the Roman Cincinnatus, and he goes back to his plow when he's done. It's code. Because you might look at, what in the world is he standing next to? He's standing next to the Roman fasces. He had the power, but he went back to his plow. And he did. He had a big farm. Okay, next picture. This I'm not going to, it's not much to see. It's on top of a building. It's actually, there's a Washington monument in Baltimore. Not the Washington Monument in Washington, but this is another one too. And this is on top. And notice he's wrapped in a toga. George Washington is wearing a toga. He's wearing other clothes too. But this sheet thing that's around him, he's wearing a toga. And in his hand, that's pointed towards you, so you can't really see it, he's holding a scroll. The scroll is his commission. The thing that said, here, you are in charge, you're in charge of the army. And he's handing it back. The statue is facing towards Annapolis, Maryland. He's giving it back to the government. He's wrapped in his toga, and he's handing back his commission. He's laying it down, because he's Cincinnatus, the guy who takes power when he has to and lays it down when he's done. All right, the next one is the most obvious. There's no way to not understand that this is like a Roman guy. This is called Enthroned Washington. It's in the National Museum of American History in Washington, D.C., and it was commissioned for the bicentennial of his birth. And he's just flat out, just like togaed.
Totally Greek.
It's totally ancient guy.
Roman. Some Roman guy. With a scroll.
Some Roman guy, except it's George Washington.
Oh. Oh, okay.
I think it's because of the angle at which we are seeing it.
He does have a really long foot, by the way.
George Washington was known as the American Cincinnatus. And this is also why we have Cincinnati, Ohio, and many other towns called Cincinnati. They're named for Cincinnatus. It was an ideal. It was an early American ideal that we would have rulers who didn't want to just take power, but they would lay it down again. Awesome. Okay. Yes, we should. And people talk about that. They talk about passing laws for term limits, right? That people can't be elected to Senate or House of Representatives for their whole lives. Just give them a couple of chances and then let somebody else have a chance. Okay, just to wrap up, because I want to talk about the Aeneid, I want to talk about the paper. We're going to start, but we're not writing this week. We're just starting it, okay? But we're going to talk about it together.
You mean just
Like-
the outline?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean.
Are we doing another persuasive paper?
We are. We are. And so last up was the war against Veii. And a guy named Camillus. All right? Camillus had been exiled. Here, let me go back to the story. Just like Coriolanus. The story, he wasn't as mean, though, as Coriolanus. Camillus's problem, Dorothy Mills doesn't tell you this, I don't think. Camillus's problem was they sacked the town, and then he had vowed a certain amount of the spoils to be offered to the gods. And then the soldiers went in and they just started snatching things, and Camillus was like, whoa, 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 whoa. I vowed 10% to the gods, and so he made everybody bring the stuff back, right? And they were weighing it to make sure he gave the gods what he had promised. And then people said, oh, I think Camillus made us all bring it back because he's stealing some of it. And it was kind of a misunderstanding. Anyway, they said, Camillus, we think you're up to no good. Hit the road. Now, he didn't pull a Coriolanus. Fortunately, he didn't go over to the enemy. But it says, the historian who tells his life says, he resolved in his anger to leave the city and go into exile. And so having taken leave of his wife and son, he went silently to the gate of the city, and there, stopping and turning around, stretched out his hands to the capital, and prayed to the gods, that if, without any fault of his own, but merely through the malice and violence of the people, he was driven out into banishment, that the Romans might quickly repent of it, and that all mankind might witness their need for the assistance and desire of the return of Camillus. His last parting shot was, "O gods, if I don't deserve this, I pray that Rome is going to be sorry they drove me away, and they're going to want me back." Okay, I'm going to leave it there because part 4 is going to tell you the rest of the story. For next week, I would like you guys to read same chapter, but parts 4 through 7. So in other words, just the rest of the chapter that you just read for this week, and answer the questions. Okay? Awesome. All right, let me see if I got a good poem before we move on to Aeneas and writing. Oh, these are the ones I didn't have one for this week, so let's just get rid of that. Okay. Everybody find an empty page. I don't care if it's in your reading guide. I don't care if it's a notebook paper. Whatever. But find an empty page. And we are going to start thinking of ideas for a paper. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about what happened in your reading this week, okay? In the Aeneid. When we left off, Aeneas had found Andromache, Hector's widow, and she had a new husband who was actually one of Hector's brothers. And do you remember what they were doing? What had they built?
Mini Rome, mini Troy.
A little baby Troy. And they called everything by the little baby Troy names, right? It's like, it's the Pergamum, which is another name for Ilium, Troy. It's the Simois River. It's the little altar for Hector. It's the temple for this. It's everything the way it used to be, only just on a smaller scale. Aeneas, oh, what a lovely place that would be to stay. He's got friends. I mean, he's related. He's a cousin of Hector's, you know. He could stay with them in little baby Troy. But unfortunately, the gods have said, Aeneas, your job is to start a new city, a new place. You have to go there. This is your job. They can have their little mini Troy. You don't get mini Troy. So, the very first thing that you read for this week says this. And unfortunately, Anchises died. Also, that happened too. While they were there in Sicily, his dad died. Not many days after the burial of Anchises, Aeneas and his companions set sail. Now, the goddess Juno hated the Trojans for many reasons. Let me stop before I read the rest of the sentence. Can you think of a reason Juno might hate Aeneas?
Because Paris didn't give her the golden apple.
That's exactly it. She's anti-Troy. Because she didn't get the apple for the fairest. Juno and Minerva, who's Athena. Minerva is the Roman name. I'm going to try, I'll mess it up, but I'll try to switch over to Roman names now.
I got you.
Juno and Minerva are anti-Troy. And Juno happens to be the queen of the gods, so she's got some clout and some power, right? So she hates them already. But there's more. There's more, and it is this. Now the goddess Juno hated the Trojans for many reasons, the chief of which was this. There was a certain city that she greatly loved, Carthage by name. It was just then being built by Queen Dido. And Juno hoped, if it might be possible, to make this the first city in the world. But she had been told that this could not be done, that the first city in the world would be the one that the Trojans would build in Italy. And now she saw these very same Trojans sailing from Sicily to this same land of Italy. You see the problem? I, Juno, love Carthage. Where is Carthage? Let's take a look. Carthage is, I can see through it, so I'm just gonna, here, we don't care about that part because we're not going over there. We just care about this end. Here's Carthage. Here's Sicily. You see it's very, very close, isn't it, to Sicily? If you were leaving Sicily and you got in a storm, you could very easily be blown to Africa, right? And here's where Rome's going to be. So they're here, and they've buried Anchises, and they're getting ready to sail away. And Juno says, okay, here's the deal. Someday I want this city to be #1 city in the world because I just like them. But, you know, Jupiter and the Fates and all these other gods have told me, no, sorry. There's going to be a city called Rome, and it's going to be in charge. And Juno says, I'm not putting up with that. I'm going to make it as hard as I possibly can for Aeneas to start this city. So, she fires up a storm, right? She calls the guy who's the king of the winds, you know, Aeolus, and says, hey, Aeolus, come here. Guess what? I got this nymph serving girl. I got a lot of them, actually. And one of them I know you're particularly fond of. I'll set you up. All you got to do is stir up a storm and just beat the living daylights out of Aeneas's fleet. Done. She's yours. And Aeolus is like, yeah, I'm a little scared of Jupiter. I'm a little scared of Neptune, but I'll do it. I'll do it for the girl. And he does. Aeneas gets blown to the coast of Africa, where a city is being built by Queen Dido. Who is Queen Dido? Does anybody remember her backstory? Where she's from? Where is she from? I need now.
She had a pretty interesting.
She had a rough past. Turns out Dido is Phoenician. Tyre, inside this area of the world right here. And her husband, her brother was the king? Yeah, I think so. Anyway, her brother murdered her husband and hid his body and lied to her about it.
Did he want to marry her or something like that?
No, just he had something against her husband. He thought her husband was out making a power grab or something. Anyway, and so her husband's ghost appeared to her and said, "Look, your brother murdered me. You need to get out while the getting is good. I know where there's a treasure buried. I'll tell you where it is. You go dig it up, load it on some ships, and get out of here before he comes for you." So she took some people who were not very fond of her brother and got on ships, and she sailed all the way from Phoenicia to Carthage. And she is in the process of building a new city there. And Aeneas and the guys who make it through the storm show up on the coast of Africa. And they don't know where they are. They don't know who lives nearby. They don't know what to do. So Aeneas says, okay, let's regroup. We've lost some ships. They got blown away from us. We don't know whether the people are alive or dead on those ships. We need to reconnoiter. We need to go scout. We need to find out where we are. We need to see if we can find them. Maybe they washed up shore somewhere. So he goes, he hunts some deer down. They eat them. So Aeneas is walking around, and suddenly this really pretty, super pretty hunter girl says, "Oh, young men," because Aeneas has his friend with him, "who are you?" And he says, "Well, the real question is, who are you? Because you're so beautiful, I think you must be a goddess or something." And he tells him who they are. And he's like, no, I'm just a hunter girl. I'm just a simple hunter girl. But I can tell you, my parents taught me to like tell the future, and I can tell that your friends are all safe and you're going to find them. And if you just follow this road and you go to the town, Queen Dido, she's really nice. She'll feed you and house you and everything. It's awesome. And then she turns to go, and she just kind of like there's this flash of glory, this gleaming flash, and Aeneas suddenly realizes, wait a minute. You're Venus, aren't you? You're my mom. You're my mom. Mom, why don't you just... But the goddesses and gods don't do that sort of thing. They just say, hey, son, it's your mom. You know, they always disguise themselves. So they go, and they find out everything is the way Venus has foretold. And Dido takes them in. Now, can anybody tell me how things go in Carthage? How does Dido feel about Aeneas? Oh, she likes him. She likes him. She's actually helped a lot by the fact that Venus and Juno don't ever mind their own business. And so you might say, why would they be working together? Well, Venus is afraid Dido might get incited to do something mean to Aeneas because Juno. And Juno's afraid Aeneas might do something mean to Dido. And so they hatch a plan, like, why don't we just make her fall in love with him, and then he'll be safe.
Who's Venus again?
Aphrodite.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure.
Good question. Takes a little while. There's a lot of double names here. And so Aeneas meets Dido, and he says, oh, let me send to the ship and bring my son, Iulus to see you. Venus snatches Iulus away and puts Cupid, her son Cupid, in his place. Cupid, who stabs people with his love arrows, But he looks like Iulus. He's like, oh, here I am, Dad. Here I am, Dido, except it's Cupid. And I don't know how old he is, but the story is that, and she puts him on her lap. It's like, oh, aren't you cute? And while he's there, he pokes her. It's not a literal arrow. Do you know what I mean? You can't feel it. He pokes your spirit with it, your soul, kind of, But anyway, he stabs her with love. And then she just looks at Aeneas. She's like, oh. So she has a dinner party. She's like, oh, Aeneas, tell me all about everything that happened to you. So he does. And it's like, oh, tell me again. It's only 2:30 in the morning. Tell me again. And so in the poem, it even says that he leaves. This makes me feel so bad. It's kind of pathetic. He leaves, they all go to sleep, and then she goes over to the couch where he had been sitting. She's like, oh, it's still warm. And then she sits in again. Ooh, he was sitting here. I mean, she's really bad. Because Cupid's done it to her, right? I mean, yeah. Oh, my goodness. Poor Dido. Okay, so let me go to this chapter just a second. Okay, so you know what? I'm giving you some extra info maybe that they think isn't the like child version, but it's okay. I'll give you the extra version. What?
They didn't say anything about Cupid.
Oh, okay. Well, this is the real. I'm telling you the real scoop. Real. Okay. So they go out on a hunting expedition. Like, oh, Dido and Aeneas and all their people and Iulus and yay. And Juno says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make a thunderstorm. And we're going to make the two of them run to the same cave. Right? So they're alone together in the cave. So thunder, lightning, and everybody scatters. And they're like, oh, we need to find a dry place. Oh, imagine finding you here. And Dido and Aeneas are alone. And they say that Juno comes and they have a wedding ceremony. And she marries Aeneas. And the nymphs are all the witnesses. And da-da-da-da. Okay, here's the thing. Nobody witnessed this. We only have Dido and Aeneas' word for it. But they come back and they are obviously a couple. Like Aeneas moves into the palace. And Dido's like, oh, life is so good because I married Aeneas and he's just dreamy. I don't actually know that she had that sort of voice. Okay, however, unfortunately for both of them, it says, this did not please Jupiter. He said, therefore, to Mercury, his messenger, go now and speak to Aeneas these words. Thus speaks the king of gods and men. Is this what your mother wished when she saved you twice from the spear of the Greeks? Are you the man who is to build a city in Italy, a city which shall rule the world? If you forget these things, think of your son. Why do you take from him the kingdom that is to be his? What are you doing here? Why are you not looking to Italy? Depart at once. So Mercury put his sandals on his feet, the sandals which have wings wherewith to fly, and took his wand in his hand. And it says, and came to Aeneas, where he stood in the middle of the city of Carthage. He had a cloak of purple, embroidered with gold around his shoulders, and a great sword in his hand. He's dressed up nice. He's eating good food, and he's dressed up, and he's helping build Carthage. Aeneas, that wasn't your job. So Mercury says, Jupiter's message, right? You have to leave. You have to leave. For a time Aeneas stood, not knowing what to do. He knew indeed that he was called to Italy, that he might do the will of the gods, and yet he feared to tell the thing to the queen. At last he called his chiefs together and said, make ready the ships and collect the people, but do this as secretly as you may, and say nothing. Who does he not want to know?
The queen.
When Dido heard it, for such things are not easily hidden, she was wild with anger and love. First she came and spoke to Aeneas, telling him what she had done for him and his people, and reproaching him for his ingratitude. You shipwrecked here on my shore. I helped fix your ships. I clothed you. I fed you. I found you places to live. I've treated you like royalty. And I married you. She also tried to keep him by telling him of the dangers of the voyage. Stay a while, she said, till stormy winds are over, and you can sail across the seas in safety. But Aeneas stood firm. Jupiter had bidden him go, and go he must. Now, this is the adult version, not the kid version. I'm going to throw this in too. She says, what about the marriage in the cave, Aeneas? What about the vows we took? And he said, well, yeah, I never really considered us married.
Oh, okay.
Yes, exactly. There's the reaction. That was just kind of a weird goddesses, nymphs thing, but it wasn't a legit wedding. So really, I have no ties to you officially. We're just having a good time here, right? Isn't it just kind of a good time? Aren't we just like enjoying each other's company? And she's like, wait a minute, sister. I thought we were married. It's like, well, I didn't really see it that way. Okay. Oh, I hope somebody remembers the answer to this question. What did Dido do when he left? Oh, yeah. When Dido looked out from the window of her palace in the morning, lo, the ships of the Trojans were gone. Then she made up her mind that she would die. She had prepared a great pile of wood. On this she laid the sword of Aeneas, which he had left behind him, and his cloak, and the other things which had belonged to him, and possessions of her own. To this pile she set fire. Then she mounted to the top, and took the sword of Aeneas in her hands, and stabbed herself with it. So she died. And the fire laid hold of the wood and made a great burning, which could be seen far off. Meanwhile, the ships of Aeneas were sailing across the sea. As they looked... Oh, was it funny that I said, meanwhile? Sorry.
That's literally the beginning of the next chapter.
Yes, it is. I'm reading the next chapter. What this meant... Oh, I'm sorry. They looked back to the shore which they had left. They saw great flames rising up into the sky. What this meant, they did not know. But they were sure that Dido was very angry, and they feared that she might do some terrible thing. Like kill herself, which she did. Okay, now it's time for your paper. Your paper that you have laid out, get a writing utensil of some sort. And write this. Should Aeneas have left Dido?
I wouldn't have. I wouldn't
Okay. Okay. Oh, we already have some excellent ideas. Let's write down as many we had. Okay. I heard, no, I wouldn't first, but I didn't hear the reason why. Was it one of you? Was it you?
I would feel bad if I left.
Okay. Why would you feel bad? You only feel bad for things you think are wrong to do. Shh, guys, you would only feel bad if you did something wrong, right? So what would be wrong about it?
Leaving her.
But what specifically? Because that's the question. What about leaving her would be wrong? What do you think, Emma?
For me, I feel like I would owe her a lot because we were shipwrecked on her island. She took us in, fed us, clothed us, gave us a place to live.
He owes her. This is a very good reason. Now, could we think of supporting reasons for that? I mean, you just listed several of them, right? Like she took, yeah, food, clothes, hospitality. She actually said she offered half her kingdom. Which isn't in your version, but she said, "Oh, you can live here and rule with me, and all your guys can just be Carthaginians, and we'll just be one big happy family." I'm sorry, is that too small? I put food, clothes, hospitality, and offered half kingdom. I'll try to write a little bigger. Also, I see it's not coming up on the video very well. Anyway, he owes her because she's given him food, clothes, hospitality, half her kingdom. You might think of other things too. Like she was nice, had dinner parties, gave him that fancy purple cloak with the gold embroidery. I mean, there's tons of stuff you could say. This is a very good reason. Now, I also heard somebody say, yes, I think it was Bryn. Oh, it was Grace? Yes. And what was your yes? You said yes because, oh my gosh, Jupiter says so. Jupiter says do it. Jupiter says you better do it. Is this when the gods tell you to do something and you don't do it, is that a good idea?
No.
Does that end well? Probably not. Do you think that we could think of 3 episodes maybe where somebody tried to not do what the gods said and they ended up poorly? Like
One of the gods wanting them to leave, and then the other one wants them to stay.
Like a Trojan Ghost sort of thing.
that's a really good no, isn't it? It's like which god? Can you keep that? Don't forget, because I might forget, but you hold on to it. But let's follow up on this. Do you guys think you could think of 3, like remember Arachne and Niobe? I mean, like all those Greek.
The guy in the chariot? The guy in Apollo's chariot?
Oh, Phaethon, which hey guys, yes, which I know are Greek stories, but the Romans kind of took them over. It's okay. It's the same gods, right? It's okay to use those. So without listing them, do you think if you use this for an idea, you could probably think of 3 examples of it not being a good idea to disobey the gods? I feel like you should be able to do that at this point.
Yeah, that's a good starting point.
Yeah. Okay, now, Julia said, but there's a problem. Juno wants him to stay.
Is that a big one?
Yeah, she's Hera. I'll put Hera. She's the queen of the gods. Wants him to
I
stay.
thought it was Hera.
Oh, you know what? Either way.
I don't know what's the Greek pronunciation.
You know what? I don't know for sure either, so I think we can say it however we like.
But is that a small thing or a big thing?
Well, I feel like this seems pretty big because now we can use, see, here's the great thing about these papers. Whatever reasons you have that you shouldn't disobey gods, you could use here. Do you see what I mean? You can use the same reasons because we don't want to disobey Juno. Because Juno, she already made the storm. She shipwrecked them. And she did destroy Troy. I mean, she was pretty instrumental in that, you know what I mean? But you could also reuse these for general, like, if a god or a goddess doesn't want you to do something, you probably shouldn't do it. And Juno is all about Aeneas staying there. So she's already caused horrible shipwrecks, tried to sink their fleet. What might she do if he leaves? If I were Aeneas, I would be mildly concerned at least. Yes. Okay. Do we have any other yeses or nos? Either way.
I had a bad marriage, so I say get going.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
They were living together.
Okay. Can we call it bad relationship?
Yeah.
And what do we mean by that? Well, first of all, why does Dido even love him?
Because
Venus
Yes, because Dido only loves because of, because of, you can say Cupid, Venus, love arrow. You don't have to put all those, okay? Anything to remind you what we're talking about, okay? So this relationship is based on kind of a lie, a little bit. Dido is so in love she's deranged because she's like been magicked, you know what I mean? She's like had a spell put on her, sort of. This doesn't seem like a good relationship basis when somebody's been enchanted.
I have another yes.
Okay, can we make sure we have 3 supports for this first? But don't forget it, okay? Married?
technically, yes.
Aeneas says no.
Well, they kind of were. I mean, they were living together,
They were living together.
so that kind of makes it strange, but
It's right.
that's strange.
And finally, does Dido seem, I used a word just a minute ago. Does Dido seem completely in her right mind? No. Dido is crazy. Dido's just crazy. This is not a good relationship situation. Do we agree with that? All right, so when Bryn stops writing, which is no hurry, I want to hear Bryn's other yes possibility. Dido is whacked.
No, Dido, not
It's
right
not
mind.
gonna get any easier for her to say, you can go, I suppose. It's just gonna get harder for her. She's gonna get more attached.
She's just going to get more attached. So
He
let's.
could bring her. He could bring her.
She has a
Yeah,
She
that's what I was
could choose
thinking.
another-
Okay.
She killed herself.
She could choose another ruler.
Okay. Let's take a look at our. Hey, Christian. This is actually very good. Should Aeneas have left Dido? That's the question. It doesn't say should Aeneas have left Carthage. It says should Aeneas have left Dido. So we could say no, he shouldn't. He could bring her. He could bring her. I feel like that would be easy enough to support. He has enough resources. He's going to have a new city. She would want to come, because she's deranged. So I feel like that would be an easy enough thing to prove.
What happened with his son? I don't know. Did his son just get put back for Cupid after they took
Oh yeah. After the job was done, they switched him out again. She actually whisked Iulus away and took him to to Mount Olympus or some god place and put him into a sleep. So he didn't know what was happening, and then she just brought him back asleep and left him there, and he didn't know what happened. He didn't know what ever happened. Okay, so wait a minute. There was something else before that, though. But on the yes, before we followed that up, before we said he could bring her, what did you say again, Bryn? Was that what you said?
She's only gonna get more.
Oh, she's only going to get more attached. Thank you, thank you. Okay, so let's think about that. That's going to be a little hard to support. We might be able to, but could it be a support for something bigger?
It could be a part of bad relationship.
It could be a part of bad relationship. Dido only will get worse. I was thinking of something else though. We said over here he could bring her. Would it be possible to argue he can't bring her?
Why couldn't he bring her?
Well,
Because it'll probably put her at risk.
okay, it will be dangerous. But what is she doing currently?
Ruling Carthage.
She's building a city. Is she going to want to leave it? She rules people. They're going to be, they will be leaderless, is what I'm writing here. They will be leaderless. Do you see? Now, this is not a real strong argument, but it is an argument. This is on the weak side, right? I think this is stronger. We could probably argue, oh yeah, so could bring her. But we'd have to go into her, would she really want to leave her people and the city she's built? But if she's crazy for love, maybe she would. What are you thinking, Luke?
If he does bring her, the love wouldn't be true.
Yeah, because it's based on a lie here. All right, so what do we have here? We have 3 yeses and we have 3 no's that all seem easy to support. Do we have any more? Is there anything else that, okay, if he doesn't leave, what won't happen? There will both of those. So here, this is going with the yes. If he doesn't leave, bad things. Okay. No Rome. If he doesn't leave, no Rome. Which means all history changes. There's no Augustus to decree the census. So Jesus can go to, Mary and Joseph can go to Bethlehem to be born. Everything Rome does.
Can we leave that out?
Okay. Everything Rome does won't happen. Maybe you think that's a good thing. Maybe you think that's a bad thing. But if he doesn't go, there will be no Rome. And all the plans, all the God's plans will change. There'll be no...
Still bring her.
Yes. So, but here's the thing. We're going to choose one side. Right? So if we're leaning on the no, he so shouldn't, we're going to play up this. If we're leaning onto this side, we're going to play up this, and this is kind of one of our weakest arguments. So let's ask that question again. What happened when he did leave? Dido got killed. So, no, because it causes Dido's death, right? And could we support this? I mean, obviously it happens, but what happens because Dido dies?
It's going back to.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, this thing Carthage doesn't have.
No, okay, yes, exactly. No ruler for Carthage. Pain and suffering for Dido. Shh, hey guys, please. Can we think of a third support for that? And we could just say she kills self. We can just kind of outline how she does it. Hey guys, are we spelling something? Okay, can I spell it for you, or I'm sorry that I'm, okay, are we good? What do you think, Emma?
If we're writing it in the future tense,
Mm-hmm.
maybe we could write it as Dido could die if Aeneas leaves.
Yes, that would probably be
She
appropriate.
would be driven mad by love and kind of could cause a lot of harm for both the city and herself.
Yeah. That, you know what? And Emma, also for the Trojans. Like we could say, what, hey guys, shh, what might she do
Right.
to Aeneas if he tries to leave? At this point, like Emma pointed out, at this point we are looking into the future, right? If we say, should he leave? If he's asking, well, I don't know, should I leave? He doesn't know exactly what's going to happen at that point, right? And you might think, oh man, I wonder what she's going to do. She's going to do something to herself. She's going to do something to me. Like that's a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of material here, don't we? Here's what I want you to do this week. We didn't really talk about the rest of the Aeneid. I want to do that real quick. I want you to choose a side. I want you to choose 3. Each side has 4. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I want you to choose 3, and I want you to make an outline. I want you to have your reason and 3 supports, then your second reason and 3 supports, and your third reason and 3 supports. I want you to do that this week. If you can think of more stuff that we didn't come up with, that'd be awesome. Add it. You can have more than 3 supports. The more you have, the better it is, right? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
I'm not asking you to write the paper. We're going to talk about the paper the next week and what we're going to add to it and everything. But I just want you to use what we've generated and come up with ideas. So I need to just be patient with me for just a moment. I want to finish up. I can't remember how far what the last chapter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh, okay. So just to review where we are, they went back to Sicily. And here, I'm just going to tell the story real quick. They went back to Sicily, and it happened to be the anniversary of his dad Anchises' death. And so they had a big sporting event. It was kind of like the Greeks did when Patroclus died and they were going to bury him. They had a big sporting event. And they had a race, a foot race. And these 2 guys decided to go racing, Nisus and Euryalus. They're best buds, right? And they're running, and one of them slips in poo. In like cow poo. And his friend, and he was in front. And, well, his friend is in front. His friend is in front. I don't remember whether it's Nisus or Euryalus falls. But there's a guy who's catching up to his friend who's the front runner, so he just reaches out and he trips the other guy. So his friend will win. The guy he trips is not very happy. I bring this up specifically because I want you to remember these 2 guys who worked together and were best buds running the foot race. The other thing to remember is, in your reading, Aeneas made it to Italy. He got to Italy, but he had to do something kind of creepy before he could start building a city, and it was go to the underworld. He went to the underworld. He went to Hades to visit his dad. And his dad did something a little odd. His dad said, come over here, I want to show you something. And he showed him this long line of people, these men. And he said, they're your descendants. They're the great Romans of the future. They haven't been put back into bodies yet. They're going to be put into bodies. But they are destined, because there was a kind of a reincarnation thing going on. And they're going to be put into bodies, and Virgil, our poet, course, he knew all these guys. For Virgil, they were historical figures, right? And he said, here's this guy, here's Augustus, here's Julius Caesar, here's all these people. They're all going to come from you, Aeneas. You got to stay the course and do it. You got to found Rome. You got to win. You got to power through. So he went back up out of the underworld, but Juno is still angry. She's so angry. She's angry all the time. And she says, I'm going to ruin this. And she gathered the women and had them set fire to some of the ships. This actually happened in Sicily. I'm telling the story in the wrong order. But they finally made it to Italy. And that's where we leave off. I want you to read chapters 11 through 17. I know these chapters don't have numbers, but presumably you can count to 17. So you can just count the names of the, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down in the table of contents. Read chapters 11 to 17. Do an outline. Hey, here's one more thing. As you read and you see what happened because he left, you might add this to your paper. All right? All right. I will see you next week. Hey, guys, I just want to remind you all, go quietly because of the Bible study, okay, as you go out.
I brought stuffed dates for anybody that wants.
Oh,